Today I want to talk to you about working with independent authors. I answer questions from illustrators on a regular basis about different kinds of problems they have, but the most common problem, by a long way, is a disagreement with an independent author. And this is someone who has no experience of publishing or illustration, who decides they want to write an illustrated book, a children's book usually. If they have no experience, we can infer a few things. Number one, they don't know how much illustrations should cost, so their budget estimations will be way lower than they should be. Number two, they don't know that illustrations are licensed and they don't understand copyright. Number three, they won't consider what is reasonable feedback for an illustrator and probably won't consider they may have to pay you more if they change the brief or give you too much feedback. I'm generalising, of course. Some are better than others. These people are from all different walks of life and career paths. The stereotype of the bored housewife writing a children's book is real, but it's not the whole picture. Strangely, I see a lot of lawyers writing books in their spare time. I suppose if you're a lawyer, you're good at writing anyway, so writing a children's book would probably be a pretty easy side project. If you've had any nightmare situations working with independent authors, let's hear about them. Stick them in the comments. I don't think that all these independent authors truly believe that they're going to write the next Harry Potter. Some of them must be doing it just for fun. But there's got to be a decent percentage of these people that really think they're going to make it as an author. Maybe they will, although the odds are against them. The vast majority of books sell next to no copies. Whatever their reasons for wanting to write a book, it's not their fault they don't know how our industry works. You'd think they'd do some research, but often that's not the case. You should make it your responsibility to be very clear with them how things should work. You have to be willing to be flexible, of course, but if you lay some ground rules at the start of the project in writing, then everyone is on the same page and it will avoid all manner of problems later down the line. I can't tell you how many new artists I've spoken to that have had a disagreement with an independent author halfway through working on a load of illustrations, or even at the end of a project, and the author just refuses to pay. It's absolutely despicable that somebody would do that to a new artist, but if they have that disagreement and the author doesn't get what they want, they don't want to spend their limited budget on something they aren't happy with. Often it's not worth going to court over because the fee is so low anyway, and even if they did, some of these artists don't have any agreements in writing, so it's very hard to prove their case. A book is a big project for an illustrator, a hell of a lot of work, mostly underpaid, even with a publisher, so you have to be sure that you're not going to be screwed by some independent author that thinks they can ask you to make 50 illustrations and then not pay you for them. The disagreements I see most often are disputes about copyright, clients expecting way too much and giving endless feedback. The client could have a very specific vision in their mind of what things should look like, but the illustrator can't see what they can see, obviously. The author doesn't trust the illustrator to bring the story to life, even if they've specifically chosen that illustrator. So let's start with copyright. An outsider to publishing or illustration will most likely assume that when they pay you, they will own your work outright and can use your work for whatever they want. We know different because we are familiar with the rules of our industry, but there's no reason why they would know, so you've got to tell them how it works. There's a few things I like to say to independent clients to familiarise them with licensing and copyright. First of all, I talk about licensing the illustrations from the start, not buying and selling. Simply mentioning the word licensing may prompt them to ask you what you mean, and then you can explain. You can tell them that illustration, much like photography or music, works on a licensing model. The illustrations, photos or songs are licensed to clients for a specific purpose, in this case a book. I mention photography and music because I think people are more generally familiar with those industries. If a song is used in a TV advert for a car, that car company doesn't then own that song, they're just paying to use it for an advert. Now, explaining this will likely provoke two concerns from the client. The first is that you'll license the images they've commissioned you for to somebody else. You can put their mind at ease there by saying that the illustrations will be exclusive to them for as long as the book is being published, or for a fixed term if you prefer, 5 or 10 years. The reality is, if you're making illustrations for a children's book, they're probably going to be so specific to that book, they're not going to be of much use to any other client anyway, so you probably won't have the opportunity to relicense them. The second concern is that they're going to have to pay you more money. sometime down the line. That's fair enough that they would worry about that. They don't want you knocking on their door at random intervals to ask for more money. But they should pay you more in certain circumstances. So tell them specifically what those circumstances are. Let's say the author prints 5,000 books to start off with. If those books sell out super fast and the book is very popular, they might print 5,000 more. In that situation, your illustration work has clearly contributed to the success of the book. So if they print another 5,000 copies, you could rightly expect an additional fee for your help in the book's success. It might be hard for them to see that, but if you can communicate to them that you're a team and you both want the book to be successful, you both should be rewarded if it does become a success. Good luck with that. It seems fair enough to me, but only if you make it clear at the beginning, not after the fact. You might say, I'd like an additional payment of 25% if you do another print run of the same size. If they only print 1,000 more, let's say, you'd have to adjust accordingly. The bottom line is, though, that the author can't take all the credit for the book's success, so they should be willing to split the reward with you. Another situation might be that the book gets picked up by a publisher. If they decide to continue using your illustrations, but they start selling tens of thousands of books around the world, you should have the opportunity to negotiate a fee for that. In that case, you'd probably negotiate that fee with the publisher rather than the author, or it might come in the form of a royalty on sales. So just let the author know if the book is picked up by a publisher, you want to negotiate a fair fee or royalty for your contribution to the book's success. If they can't understand any of this, then they're probably not a good fit for you. They want to use you rather than partner with you. If they think they should own the copyright to the images, you can simply point out to them any children's book you might see in a bookshop and ask them to read the copyright notices in the first few pages. Most of the time, the illustrator is credited as a copyright holder of the images. It's completely normal and it doesn't affect the author in any negative way. Sometimes the illustrator is credited on the front page, on the cover. If the author really likes you and your work, they should be happy to credit you appropriately and be proud to work with you, not to try and take all the credit themselves. So you establish that you are licensing the illustrations for use in the book. This should include marketing of the book too, that's normal. If they want to use the work on their website, you could probably throw that in there too, it's no big deal. But if they start getting into merchandise, let's say, or whatever, that's a different story. That's a whole different ballgame. I don't think you really need to mention this at the start because it's very unlikely, but just make it clear what is included at the start. They know you own the copyright to the images and they know you won't license them to anyone else. They also know that if the book is a success, that you have contributed to its success and you expect to be rewarded for that. If you can get all of that cleared up front and they still want to work with you, you'll be in a good position to start a partnership. Next thing is the client expecting too much. Now this is easily solved. Tell them exactly what your process will be and that anything outside of that will need to be paid for. So that might be 3 rounds of revisions. If you've got tons and tons of illustrations to make, maybe it's only 2 rounds. You can tell them that you'll deliver sketches first and that any major changes to the illustrations should be made at that stage, because once you start colouring or texturing or however you work, it becomes a bigger deal to change. The next round of feedback can be for colours and smaller adjustments, whatever you feel comfortable with. You can tell them you'll deliver the illustrations in batches of 10, for example, so they know exactly what to expect and when. This is a good opportunity to bring up staged payments, which I'll talk about a little bit later. You can also tell them that any feedback over the agreed 3 rounds will need to be paid for on an hourly or a daily rate, depending on the scope of the feedback. Big changes equal a big fee for them. Small changes won't be very much. So that should encourage them to keep their changes small. You can also use this as an opportunity to give them a realistic schedule for the whole book. That's problem 2 solved, hopefully. Problem 3 is not so easy to solve, unfortunately. If an author has spent a year writing a book, they will have a vision in their mind of what things look like and what characters look like, and they're in control of that the whole way through in their mind. It's understandable that they would find it difficult to let go of some of that control and let an illustrator bring their own vision to it. I don't know how to solve this, but if they've chosen you, hopefully it's because they like your work and not just that you're the cheapest option. If they do like your work, You need to do your best to understand their vision, of course, but also let them know that they need to believe in your style and your expertise too. This is one of the many ways that having a publisher involved can be so valuable, because they can be impartial. An author will find it very difficult to let go of the reins. My best advice would be to talk about it openly with the author. Tell them that you'll do your best to communicate their vision, but that they also need to let you do your thing and bring your own creative expertise to the project. The most important thing when working with an independent author, or any independent client for that matter, is to protect yourself. And you do that by explaining the rules, getting things in writing by email. For any key decisions that are made, you want to be able to refer back to that email where the client agrees to whatever it may be if a disagreement arises. If any conversation happens by phone, follow up with a summary email and ask them to confirm the details are correct. I recommend you watch my video, An Email is a Contract, because it will tell you what you need in detail. You need to get a client's details. You want to know a full name and address and a phone number, because this client could simply disappear if they decide to. You or your legal representation need to know where to find them if it comes to that. Hopefully it won't. You need to make sure that you get paid. If you agree to accept the whole fee at the end of the project, the client could disappear 80% of the way through and you get nothing. You need to organise staged payments for your work at key points through the project. You might get an upfront payment, a payment on the delivery of the sketches, and a final payment on delivery of the final artworks. That's more or less standard with real publishers. Or if it's a 6-month project, you might prefer to have a payment every month. Either way, if the client disappears, at least you're not left with nothing. You're not running a charity. Make sure you get paid for your hard work. I should say, I also answer a lot of questions from independent authors on my blog. I guess if people Google problems working with illustrators, they find my articles. Sometimes I need to tell them how it is and that they need to respect illustrators' time and work. But sometimes I have to advise them on working with difficult illustrators. It works both ways. If you expect the author to treat you well, you also have to respect them and their work. If you miss deadlines, don't listen to their vision, and spring things on them halfway through the project with no warning, like copyright demands, additional fees or whatever, of course they're going to have a problem with that. Who wouldn't? Be clear about what you expect and what you will deliver from the start. Work as a team to make something good. Great. If you're working on a book with an author, you're partners, or you should be. You need to be open and honest and respectful. If this has been useful, give me a thumbs up. Stay safe.